There's over 1,200 new software and IT services firms launched every month in the US. So competition is just growing and growing and growing. So the question is, how do you really prepare yourself to stand out and in a way that will continue for the coming years? Mark, super excited to have you here today to talk about go-to-market and differentiation.
Excellent. So yeah, I think I've kind of bounced in my career between building software and running services companies or being involved in services companies. And I think that gives me an unusual perspective, but I think actually acting like a product manager when you look at your services company is really valuable. And I think it's one of the things that helped us drive the growth when I was at Nexient. I think there's a possibility for everybody to think AI somehow really changes how you need to go about creating your differentiation, and I think that's not true. I think AI is just yet another disruption or technology tool that you need to take advantage of. But at the end of the day, you need to create a truly differentiated offering. That alone is not enough, though. You need to have the right market timing for that offering. And those two things together aren't even enough. You need to have the right team that can take your new offering to market. Um, so let me dive in and just, Jenna said that number is kind of staggering to me. It was 1,200 new firms coming out each month, I think you said. When I took over Nexient, I did some research and I learned there were 10,000 firms globally that did what we did, broadly. So we did software outsourcing. Like, how on earth do you stand out amongst 10,000 firms globally? So we spent a lot of our energy trying to figure out the offering, the timing, and the team. Um, so I thought I would just walk through a very simple set of questions you should be asking yourself, and I put together a simple example to just try to bring it to life a little bit. So I always start with who is your audience? I think this is the most basic question. It's effectively what is your available market? Who's in it? So in my example, one way you could define that is you could say, I'm building a new consultancy and I have some expertise in the utility industry. So I'm going to go after US utilities with electric grids and more than 2 billion in revenue. Right? So you get pretty concrete. And in this specific set of constraints I've just outlined, there are 30 roughly of those kinds of companies. So you may start there, and if your firm gets up and running, you may expand it to ones with less revenue. You might look at gas utilities. There's a lot of other ways you could expand from 30 to more targets, but starting your firm, you've got these 30 targets. And then I think the next one is that you really need to answer for yourself on how you're differentiated is what is the top challenge that your firm solves? And this also kind of goes back to your audience. What are the challenges that they have? What is it that they need you to bring? Um, in my experience at Nexient, it's a few years old, but we had a great relationship with PG&E, which is the Northern California gas and electric utility, and their problem in the like maybe 2017, 2018 timeframe was wildfires often caused by their grid, creating all kinds of havoc across Northern California. And so they needed help creating a fire resilient electric grid. And then the last question, and I'm oversimplifying a bit here, but what is the unique offering you're going to bring them for this challenge that they've got? Um, we had three drone asset inspections. So imagine a drone flying over power lines all over the place in California with 4K video, and then applying AI to try to figure out are there pieces of those assets that you could send a human being out to take a look at and see if they need to be replaced. Um, Something that was a really brute force solution we called public safety power shutdown, where literally on a hot, windy, dry day, we would just turn off parts of PG&E's grid. We helped them build that. So on their biggest one, they turned off almost 1 million customers just so they wouldn't light the place on fire. And then they got more sophisticated and they got into very grid specific monitoring. So imagine just a very small section of the power grid. They can monitor it for faults and turn it off in a very precise way. So we had different things we helped them work work with. This is where I kind of mash together my product and services background. So for those of you that have worked in product companies, you're probably familiar with this technology adoption curve. I think it was originally published by Jeffrey Moore, and he talks about sort of breaking your audience into innovators who are truly crazy and willing to sort of put up with whatever faults your solution might have because they see where the solution's going. Early adopters who are a little less forgiving, but still way more forgiving than the majority of people. And so they're willing to and want to take technology early. And then you get into the early majority, late majority, and laggards. Pretty self-explanatory. So if you look at my three examples, you might look at that drone asset inspection. We were doing that for a few years, probably back in 2017, 2018, we were doing that. So it's probably something that the majority can do today, and the majority of firms have adopted. This public safety power shutdown, I think PG&E was early in having this problem, and so this brute force method is still probably an early adopter one, and it may not be a great solution, so it may never make it over to the majority. And then this very precise grid-specific monitoring, as far as I'm aware, is still pretty early in the curve. So when you're creating the ability for your firm to have an offering to your clients, you really want to be somewhere in this innovator early adopter part of the curve, especially if you're a boutique firm. Once you get to early majority, late majority, the top five consulting firms are very likely competing with you. And they're also very likely somewhere around the beginning of early majority. They're going to buy a lot of the boutiques that have built the expertise for that early adopters have taken on. So if you're in a boutique firm, you want to be operating in this innovator early adopter stage. And as you get into the early majority, you either need to sell your firm to one of the large ones or innovate again so that you've got a new offering that you can kind of ride up that curve. So I think it's really important to get the timing right for your differentiating solution. Um, all of that is great, but if you don't have a really experienced team who can talk to prospective customers and prospective clients and help sell this solution, it doesn't really matter. So the first rule that I came up with, not that I came up with, but I guess I learned it while I was at Accenture and we applied while I was at Nexient, was the people who can really sell this stuff the best are practitioners. So people who've been in the craft their whole career. Uh, they may be, in my case at Nexient, we were building software, so they were product managers, user experience designers, software developers, and architects. Um, Finding people like that who also want to carry a quota is not easy. They're a little bit of unicorn, but you need to find those people who can go out and represent you because your buyers, especially early adopters and innovators, really want to talk about the solution. Those people are going to need to change what the request is from the prospect. So in the example of Nexient, we had moved ourselves from effectively staff augmentation engineers in the very early days to selling a team, a product pod, if you will, that was a product manager, a user experience designer, and some engineers and testers. So we're sort of saying you need to buy this team. They will take on a big part of delivering your product specifically. And uh, what the requests we would get though would be, can you give us three engineers? So we needed really experienced practitioners who could take that request for three engineers and educate the client or the prospective client on why it'd be a much better result if they bought our product pod, and that we could help them either build the strategy, identify the audience, and create the differentiation, and then build it for them. Or if they've already got one in place, it was still worth some time to just validate it before we go off and build. We had good success with a lot of clients, not all of them. Some clients just wanted their staffing, effectively a few engineers, but we got a lot of clients to buy into this approach. And I think that was because of the strength of our go-to-market team, our client partners, our general managers, and our sales team. And one of the things that is critical as you're doing this process of sort of educating and transforming a request into what you do is you have to keep giving value at each step. So you're almost doing a little bit of free consulting at each step along the conversation to get them more and more engaged. And then ultimately they came over and bought what we were selling. So what I thought I would do, I thought about how do I create an example of going through these three questions, and I thought it'd be easier to go through one that's current, which is my firm Projectworks is working on a new product that we're going to release into beta in Q1. Um, and so I just thought it'd be easier to sort of show. And part of what I'm trying to get across here is that even though AI and all these technologies are new and a bit overwhelming at times, there's a pretty old school process for looking at your audience, looking at what their challenges are, and creating that differentiated offering that you can go through. And it's the same as it's ever been. So I don't think that the kind of the fundamentals have changed. So just a very quick example to show you how we're doing that. We're looking at where we could best apply AI into our product. We felt that a new area for us of helping firms write and send proposals would be a good place to try that. So the first thing we did is we went out to our audience. We have a fairly well-defined what we call ICP or ideal customer profile. There's small mid-market consultancies between 20 and 500 employees. Um, they're in one of these five countries, the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And you can see down below they work in software development, business consulting, architecture and design, civil engineering, and a few others, right? So all of them work on a statement of work, project-oriented basis. That's kind of the common theme. So first thing we did, we went out and we found 15 folks across our five countries that were willing to talk to us about their current process, their current challenges in writing and sending proposals. Um, they gave us a whole bunch of challenges, some of which have nothing to do with AI, and some of which are actually really well suited to bringing AI in. So this, I think, helps us create something that's valuable to these teams and takes advantage of AI where appropriate, but doesn't sort of try to push it in parts of the process where it's not appropriate. So just to give you a very quick overview of how there's sort of three parts to what we came up with. Most of them told us they did not trust AI or they did not like the tone that AI came up with, and at least in terms of creating this proposal. Proposal is a pretty sensitive brand specific thing. So the first thing we've done is we've created the ability to take their winning proposals, automatically ingest them into the tool. And the goal of that is just to create effectively a content management system or a content library of what really works for that firm when they go do proposals. So that's got a huge AI component to it. The second thing is actually much more about the team collaborating, which is here's all these blocks you can imagine about us, case studies, legal T's and C's that might go in a typical proposal. So they can then just go in and edit them and manage them as a team. So it's effectively a content management solution. Not a lot of AI happening here other than we used it to generate the first draft. And then again, once you have a content management library and all these different blocks you're happy with, you can bring in the problem statement, whether it's a gong recording of your customer describing their problem or maybe a formal RFP, whatever it is. And you've got all these content blocks that you and your team have collaborated on. You can also put in a template if you've got one of how you want it to look. All of that, again, AI gets applied heavily here. Out pops a draft proposal. Again, most of our customers told us when they get that draft proposal, they're going to go in and edit it fairly heavily, but it is going to save them. We've heard numbers anywhere from 30 or 40% on the low end up to 80 or 90% on the high end from our initial alpha customers who are using a sort of a prototype of this currently. So I think overall, what I'm trying to get at there with that example is, even though there's a lot of new technologies, there's a lot of different things happening in the market, going out and talking to your audience is crucial. Understanding their challenges is crucial, and applying AI like you would any other technology where appropriate makes sense. So the things I would encourage you to do, if you want to really work on the differentiation, is fall in love with the problem, right? So what is the pain point in the market you are trying to solve? Who's your audience, and what really is keeping them awake at night? And then I think you've got to really create that unique solution that solves their pain point, that is on the upswing in that technology adoption curve. And then you got to build a fantastic team of really strong people who are both deeply expert in as practitioners in whatever your service offering is, and also good at selling. Hard to find. It took me a long time to find the right ones, but once you do, it's pretty magical. These two things came together and really helped drive the growth that we saw at Nexient.